Xavier Montgomery had exactly 3 rules when it came to women, and touching his best friend's little sister topped the list of things he would never, ever do. Yet here she was, laughing at something on her phone across the dimly lit bar, completely unaware that he had been watching her for the past 20 minutes like some kind of obsessed fool. "You're staring again," Marcus called out from behind the bar where he was restocking glasses. Marcus Williams had been Xavier's closest friend since their college days at Stanford, back when Xavier was just another business major with big dreams, and Marcus was studying architecture. Now, Xavier owned a commercial real estate empire worth somewhere north of $40 million, and Marcus had designed half the buildings Xavier's company had developed across California. "I'm not staring," Xavier lied, tearing his gaze away from the woman who had been occupying far too much of his mental space lately. "Just making sure she's okay. This isn't exactly the safest neighborhood." Marcus laughed, the sound rich and knowing. "Dude, Jade is 24 years old. She can handle herself in a bar in downtown San Francisco. Besides, she's here with her friends. Stop being weird." Xavier knew Marcus was right, but that didn't stop the protective instinct that flared in his chest every time he saw Jade Vaughn. He had known her since she was 16, a gangly teenager with braces and an attitude problem. Back then, she had been nothing more than his best friend's annoying little sister, who always seemed to be lurking around whenever he visited the Williams household. But Jade wasn't 16 anymore. She had grown into a stunning woman with warm brown skin, expressive dark eyes, and a smile that could stop traffic. She worked as a physical therapist at a rehabilitation center downtown, and from what Marcus told him, she was damn good at her job. Patients requested her specifically, and she had a waiting list that stretched for months. "I should head out," Xavier said, finishing the last of his whiskey. He had come to this particular bar because it was close to his penthouse, not because he knew Jade and her friends hung out here on Thursday nights. At least, that's what he told himself. "Running away?" Marcus asked, raising an eyebrow. "That's not like you." Xavier Montgomery doesn't run from anything. "I'm not running. I have an early meeting with some investors from Tokyo tomorrow morning. The Nakamura deal, remember? Right. The deal you've been planning for 6 months that you could handle in your sleep." Marcus leaned against the bar, his expression turning serious. "Look, man, I've known you for almost 15 years. I can tell when something's eating at you. What's going on?" Xavier opened his mouth to deflect, to make some joke or change the subject entirely, but the words died in his throat as Jade suddenly appeared beside him. Up close, she smelled like vanilla and something floral he couldn't quite place. She wore a simple black dress that hugged her curves in ways that made his mouth go dry. "Xavier, I thought that was you," she said, her face lighting up with genuine pleasure. "I haven't seen you in forever. How have you been?" "Good, busy with work. You know how it is." He was acutely aware of how stiff he sounded, how formal. This was ridiculous. He had negotiated million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, but put him near Jade Vaughn and he turned into an awkward teenager, still buying up half of California. She teased, sliding onto the barstool next to him. "Marcus tells me you just closed some huge deal in Sacramento." "It was nothing major, just a few office buildings." Jade laughed, the sound washing over him like warm honey. "Xavier, you're literally a millionaire who owns half the commercial real estate in the Bay Area. You can admit when you've done something impressive. It won't kill you." "37 million last I checked," Marcus interjected helpfully, "and that's just his liquid assets. The property portfolio is worth way more." Xavier shot his friend a look that could have melted steel. Marcus just grinned back, completely unrepentant. "Wow, Jade said softly. "That's incredible. I remember when you and Marcus were just starting out, working out of that tiny office in Oakland. You've come so far." There was no envy in her voice, no calculation, just genuine warmth and pride, which somehow made everything worse. Xavier had dated plenty of women who saw dollar signs when they looked at him, who wanted the lifestyle and prestige that came with being on his arm. Jade looked at him like he was just Xavier, Marcus's friend who sometimes came over for poker nights and complained about difficult contractors. "What about you?" he asked, desperate to shift the focus away from himself. "Marcus says you're crushing it at the rehabilitation center." Her entire face transformed when she smiled. "I love my job. I mean, it's hard sometimes, seeing people struggle with their recovery, but when you help someone walk again or regain mobility, they thought they'd lost forever. There's nothing else like it." They talked for another hour, long after Marcus had moved away to serve other customers. Jade told him about a patient she was working with, a former dancer who had been in a car accident and was learning to walk again. Xavier found himself sharing details about his work that he rarely discussed with anyone outside of business meetings. She understood the pressure, the long hours, the constant feeling that you could always be doing more. "I should get back to my friends," Jade finally said, glancing over her shoulder at the table where 3 women were not so subtly watching them. "But this was really nice. We should catch up more often." "Yeah, definitely," Xavier agreed, even though every instinct screamed that spending more time with her was a terrible idea. She touched his arm briefly as she stood, and the contact sent electricity racing through his veins. Then she was gone, weaving through the crowd back to her table, and Xavier was left staring after her like a lovesick idiot. "You're in trouble," Marcus said, reappearing with another whiskey that Xavier definitely didn't need. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Come on, X." "I've seen that look before. You're into my sister." Xavier's stomach dropped. "I'm not. She's a good person and I respect her, but that's it. I would never cross that line." Marcus studied him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Look, Jade's an adult. She can date whoever she wants. But if you're going to pursue something with her, you need to be sure. Really sure. Because she's not some socialite you can take to a few charity galas and then forget about. She's my sister, and she deserves someone who's all in." "It's not going to happen," Xavier said firmly. "I care about our friendship too much to risk it." Marcus nodded slowly. "All right. Just remember I said this when you eventually change your mind, which we both know you will." Xavier left the bar shortly after, but sleep eluded him when he finally made it back to his penthouse. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights, thinking about warm brown eyes and a smile that made him forget every rule he'd ever made for himself. The next few weeks passed in a blur of meetings and property acquisitions. The Nakamura deal closed successfully, adding another commercial complex to his portfolio. Xavier should have been celebrating, should have been focused on the next opportunity, but instead, he found his thoughts drifting to Jade at the most inconvenient moments. He tried to avoid situations where he might run into her, but the universe seemed determined to throw them together. There was the charity fundraiser for children's hospitals where she volunteered, and he was a major donor. The surprise birthday party Marcus threw for his girlfriend where Jade helped coordinate everything. Even the coffee shop near his office, where he discovered she met clients before their morning sessions. Each encounter chipped away at his resolve a little more. She was witty and passionate and completely unimpressed by his wealth. When she looked at him, she saw Xavier, not his bank account or his business empire. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. The breaking point came on a Saturday afternoon in late September. Marcus had invited him to a family barbecue at his parents' house in Oakland, the same house where Xavier had spent countless weekends during college. He had tried to decline, making up some excuse about paperwork, but Marcus had seen right through him. "Just come, man. My mom asks about you constantly. She made that potato salad you love." So Xavier went, telling himself he could handle a few hours of polite conversation. He could be around Jade without making a fool of himself. He was a successful businessman who had built an empire from nothing. He had self-control. That self-control lasted approximately 15 minutes, right up until Jade walked into the backyard wearing jean shorts and a yellow tank top, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She was carrying a tray of burgers toward the grill where Marcus's father was manning the flames. "Xavier," Mrs. Williams called out when she spotted him, pulling him into a warm hug that smelled like cinnamon and home. "It's been too long. You work too much." "Guilty as charged," he admitted, returning the embrace. Sarah Williams had been like a second mother to him during college, always making sure he had a home-cooked meal and a place to stay during holidays when his own parents were too busy traveling. "Come help me in the kitchen," she commanded, linking her arm through his. "I need someone tall to reach the serving platters on the top shelf." The kitchen was organized chaos, with various family members moving in and out grabbing drinks and condiments. Xavier retrieved the platters and was about to escape back outside when Jade appeared in the doorway, nearly colliding with him. "Sorry, I was just getting more ice," she said, laughing as she steadied herself with a hand on his chest. "Why do I only ever seem to crash into you?" "Maybe the universe is trying to tell you something," he said before he could stop himself. She tilted her head, studying him with those impossibly expressive eyes. "Like what?" "Like you should watch where you're going," he deflected, stepping around her. His heart was pounding so hard he was sure everyone in the house could hear it. Dinner was a loud, chaotic affair with Marcus's extended family, filling every available seat around the long outdoor table. Xavier found himself sitting directly across from Jade, which meant he spent the entire meal trying not to stare at her while she laughed and joked with her cousins. She had this way of making everyone around her feel seen and valued, giving her full attention to whoever was speaking. After dinner, the adults settled into lawn chairs while the younger kids ran around playing tag in the fading daylight. Xavier was deep in conversation with Marcus's father about a property development opportunity in Oakland when Jade dropped into the empty chair beside him. "Mind if I steal him for a bit, Mr. Williams?" she asked with a charming smile. "Course not. This old man needs a break anyway." Marcus's father winked at Xavier before heading toward the dessert table. "What's up?" Xavier asked, trying to keep his voice casual. "I wanted to show you something. Come with me." Before he could think of a reason to decline, she was pulling him toward the back of the yard where a small path led into the wooded area behind the house. They walked in comfortable silence until they reached a clearing with a weathered wooden bench overlooking a small pond. "I used to come here all the time when I was a kid," Jade said, settling onto the bench. "Whenever things got too loud or overwhelming, this was my escape." Xavier sat beside her, maintaining a careful distance even though every cell in his body wanted to move closer. "It's peaceful. I found Marcus here once, after you guys graduated college. He was stressed about starting his architecture firm, worried he'd made the wrong choice leaving that corporate job. I told him that playing it safe wasn't the same as being happy." "That sounds like good advice." She turned to face him, her expression serious. "Xavier, why have you been avoiding me?" The direct question caught him off guard. "I haven't been avoiding you." "Yes, you have. Ever since that night at the bar, you've been weird around me. Did I do something wrong, say something that offended you?" "No, God, no." Jade, you didn't do anything wrong. Then what is it? Because I thought we were becoming friends and now you barely look at me. Xavier ran a hand through his dark hair, debating how much to tell her. The truth sat on his tongue, dangerous and intoxicating. It's complicated. I'm a smart woman. I can handle complicated. He met her gaze, and something in those warm brown eyes made him reckless. The truth is, I've been avoiding you because being around you is difficult for me. Because I think about you way more than I should. Because you're my best friend's sister, and there are rules about this sort of thing, but apparently my brain didn't get the memo. The silence that followed felt endless. Xavier waited for her to laugh, to tell him he was being ridiculous, to run back to the house and tell Marcus that his friend had lost his mind. Instead, Jade moved closer, closing the distance between them. For the record, I've been thinking about you too. A lot. And I'm really glad you said something, because I was starting to think I was imagining the tension between us. Jade. Her name came out as half warning, half plea. This is a bad idea. Marcus is my oldest friend. Your family has been like family to me. If this goes wrong, what if it goes right? She interrupted. What if we're both so busy being afraid that we miss out on something amazing? She had a point, but fear still clawed at his chest. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to lose Marcus's friendship. There's too much at stake. Then we'll be careful. We'll take it slow, see where this goes. She placed her hand over his, her touch sending warmth radiating up his arm. But I need to know if you're interested, Xavier, because if you are, I'm willing to take the risk. Looking at her in the fading golden light, Xavier knew he was already lost. He had been fighting this for weeks, maybe even months, and he was tired of pretending he didn't want her. I'm interested, definitely interested. Her smile could have powered the entire city. Good. So what happens now? Now I do something I've been thinking about for way too long. He cupped her face gently, giving her plenty of time to pull away, but she leaned into his touch. When their lips finally met, it felt like every cliché he had ever rolled his eyes at in movies. Fireworks, electricity, the whole ridiculous package. They broke apart slowly, both breathing hard. Jade laughed, the sound slightly breathless. Wow. That was, yeah, he agreed, resting his forehead against hers. But we should probably head back before someone comes looking for us. Walking back to the house, Xavier felt lighter than he had in weeks, but anxiety still hummed beneath his skin. They agreed to keep things quiet for now, to figure out what this was between them before involving Marcus and the rest of her family. It felt like lying by omission, but Xavier needed time to wrap his head around everything. Their first official date happened 3 days later at a small Italian restaurant in North Beach, far enough from their usual haunts that they were unlikely to run into anyone they knew. Jade wore a deep blue dress that matched the color of the bay at sunset, and Xavier couldn't take his eyes off her. Tell me something I don't know about you, she said over pasta and wine. Something real. Xavier thought for a moment. I'm terrified most of the time. Everyone sees the successful businessman who always has a plan, but inside I'm constantly worried I'm one mistake away from losing everything. That's the imposter syndrome talking. You've earned every bit of your success. She reached across the table, lacing her fingers through his. My turn. I almost didn't become a physical therapist. I was accepted to law school, had everything planned out, but the week before classes started, I realized I was doing it because I thought it would make me look impressive. I wanted to help people directly, not spend my life in courtrooms. Do you ever regret it? Not even once. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. They talked until the restaurant staff started stacking chairs around them, and then they walked along the waterfront, wrapped up in each other. Xavier had dated plenty of women over the years, but nothing had ever felt like this. Jade challenged him, made him laugh and looked at him like he hung the moon. The next few weeks fell into a pattern. They saw each other whenever their schedules aligned, stealing hours here and there. Breakfast dates before work, late dinners after her evening sessions, weekend mornings spent in bed at his penthouse talking about everything and nothing. Xavier had never been happier, but the secret was eating at him. "You need to tell Marcus," Jade said one Sunday morning as they lay tangled together in his sheets. Sunlight streamed through the windows, painting her skin golden. "This is getting too serious to keep hiding." Xavier knew she was right. They had been together for almost 2 months, and what had started as intense attraction had deepened into something that felt a lot like love. He was falling for her, had probably already fallen, and Marcus deserved to know. "I'll talk to him this week," he promised, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I just need to figure out the right way to explain. You tell him the truth. That we're together, that we care about each other, and that we're not going anywhere." That evening, after Jade left for a family dinner, Xavier paced his penthouse trying to plan what he would say. Every scenario he ran through in his head ended with Marcus furious, and their friendship in ruins. But the alternative was worse, continuing to lie to someone who had been like a brother to him. The confrontation came sooner than Xavier expected. He was at his office on Tuesday afternoon, reviewing contracts for a new development in San Jose, when Marcus walked in without knocking. One look at his best friend's face told Xavier that the secret was out. "How long?" Marcus asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "About 2 months," Xavier admitted, standing to face him. "Marcus, listen, 2 months. You've been seeing my sister for 2 months and didn't tell me. I wanted to, but I didn't know how. I knew you'd be angry, and I didn't want to risk our friendship over something that might not work out." "So you figured lying was better?" Marcus's jaw clenched. "She's my baby sister, X. You should have come to me from the start." "You're right. I should have told you immediately, but I was scared, and by the time I realized how serious this was getting, it felt too late to come clean." Marcus stared at him for a long moment, anger and hurt warring across his features. "Is this real? Or is she just another woman you'll get bored with in a few months?" The accusation stung, but Xavier kept his voice level. "It's real. I'm in love with her, Marcus." "I know that's not what you want to hear, but it's the truth." "You're in love with her," Marcus repeated, as if testing the words. "Does she know?" "Not yet. I was waiting for the right moment." "And what happens when it doesn't work out, when you break her heart and I'm stuck in the middle?" "That's not going to happen. I know my track record isn't great, but Jade is different. She makes me want to be better, do better. I've never felt this way about anyone." Marcus moved to the window, staring out at the city below. The silence stretched between them, heavy with years of friendship and trust. Finally, he turned back to Xavier. "My mom figured it out. She saw the way you two were looking at each other at the barbecue. She's the one who told me to talk to you." "Is she angry?" "Surprisingly, no. She said she's been hoping you two would get together for years. Apparently everyone saw this coming except me." Marcus shook his head ruefully. "Look, I'm pissed that you kept this from me. We tell each other everything, but I also know you, X. You don't do feelings. If you're admitting you love my sister, then it must be serious." Relief flooded through Xavier. "It is. I promise I'll take care of her. I won't hurt her. You better not, because I know where you live." Marcus's expression softened slightly. "For what it's worth, Jade told me the same thing. That she's in love with you, that she's never been happier, so I guess I can't really object even if I wanted to. She said she loves me." "Yeah, man, you two are disgustingly gone for each other. It's actually kind of gross." Marcus moved toward the door, then paused. "One more thing. Next time you want to date my sister, how about you ask permission first?" Xavier grinned. "There won't be a next time. This is it for me." After Marcus left, Xavier sat at his desk, Marcus's words echoing in his head. Jade loved him. The knowledge filled him with a warmth that had nothing to do with physical attraction and everything to do with finding someone who understood him completely. He called her immediately. "Are you free tonight? I need to see you. Is everything okay? Did Marcus talk to you?" "Everything's fine." "Better than fine. Just say you'll meet me." They agreed on his penthouse at 7. Xavier spent the afternoon distracted, barely hearing what his assistant was trying to tell him about the next day's meetings. He left the office early, stopping at a florist to buy an armful of peonies because Jade had once mentioned they were her favorite. She arrived right on time, wearing jeans and a soft sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. "The suspense is killing me. What's going on?" Xavier handed her the flowers, then pulled her close, breathing in her familiar vanilla scent. "Marcus knows. He came to my office today, and he's okay with it." "Well, okay is probably too strong a word. He's accepting that we're together, which is more than I hoped for." Jade pulled back to look at him, her eyes shining. "Really? He's not furious. He was pretty angry about the secret, but he understands. Your mom figured it out, apparently." "My mom sees everything. I should have known we wouldn't fool her." Jade set the flowers on the counter, then took both his hands. "There's something I need to tell you. I already know. Marcus told me." Xavier cupped her face, his thumbs tracing her cheekbones. "But I need to hear it from you. I'm in love with you, Xavier Montgomery. I think I have been since that night at the bar when you couldn't stop staring at me. I love you too. I'm completely, ridiculously in love with you, and I'm done hiding it." Their kiss was deep and consuming, full of promise and relief. When they finally broke apart, Jade was smiling so wide it made Xavier's chest ache. "So what now?" she asked. "Now we stop sneaking around. I want to take you to dinner and hold your hand in public. I want everyone to know you're mine." "Possessive much?" she teased, but her eyes were soft. "When it comes to you, absolutely." That night marked a shift in their relationship. No more hiding, no more carefully orchestrated schedules to avoid being seen together. Xavier took her to his favorite restaurants, introduced her to his business associates, and brought her as his date to charity events. Jade integrated seamlessly into his world while maintaining her own identity and career. She never asked him for anything, never tried to change him, just loved him exactly as he was. Marcus eventually came around completely, though he made a show of complaining about their public displays of affection. Xavier suspected his friend was secretly pleased that two of his favorite people had found happiness together. 6 months after that first kiss by the pond, Xavier took Jade back to that same clearing behind her parents' house. It was March, and the trees were just beginning to bloom with spring color. He had been planning this for weeks, had carried the ring in his pocket to 3 different business meetings because he couldn't leave it at home. "Why did you want to come out here?" Jade asked as they reached the bench. "It's kind of cold. Because this is where everything changed, where you asked me why I was avoiding you and I finally admitted the truth." Xavier took her hands, which were freezing despite her gloves. "Jade, before I met you, I had my life planned out. Build the business, make money, stay focused on work. Relationships were casual, temporary. I never expected to fall in love." "Xavier." Her voice was soft, her eyes already glistening. "But then you crashed into my life, literally, and everything I thought I wanted changed. You made me realize that success doesn't mean anything if you don't have someone to share it with. You challenge me and support me and love me even when I'm being stubborn." He dropped to one knee, pulling the small velvet box from his pocket. "Jade Vaughn, will you marry me?" She was crying now, happy tears streaming down her face as she nodded vigorously. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes." The ring was a simple platinum band with a single perfect diamond, elegant and understated like her. It fit perfectly, catching the late afternoon light. Xavier stood and pulled her into his arms, and she kissed him like the world was ending, and he was her only anchor. They walked back to the house hand in hand to share the news with her family. Marcus took one look at Jade's glowing face and the ring on her finger and pulled Xavier into a fierce hug. "Welcome to the family, brother," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Officially this time." The wedding took place 5 months later on a warm August evening at a vineyard in Napa Valley. It was smaller than it could have been given Xavier's connections, but they both wanted something intimate with just their closest friends and family. Jade wore a simple lace gown that took Xavier's breath away when she walked down the aisle. Marcus stood beside him as best man, grinning like an idiot. "You did good, man," Marcus whispered as they waited for Jade to reach the altar. "She looks happy." "I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure she stays that way," Xavier promised. The ceremony was short and sweet, full of laughter and tears. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Xavier kissed his bride thoroughly, earning whoops and applause from their guests. They danced their first dance to an old soul song that Jade's father used to play when she was a child, and Xavier held her close, marveling at how lucky he was. Later, as they cut the cake and toasted with champagne, Xavier caught Marcus's eye across the reception. His best friend raised his glass in a silent salute, and Xavier returned the gesture. Everything had worked out exactly as it was supposed to. The reception lasted well into the night, with dancing and speeches and more food than anyone could possibly eat. Jade's mother cried happy tears, and Xavier's parents, who had flown in from their latest adventure in Thailand, told everyone who would listen about their successful son and his beautiful bride. As the evening wound down, Xavier and Jade snuck away from the party, stealing a quiet moment under the stars. The vineyard stretched out around them, rows of grapevines casting long shadows in the moonlight. "Mrs. Montgomery," Xavier said, testing out the name. "How does it feel?" "Perfect." Everything about today was perfect. She leaned against him and he wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on top of her head. "I can't believe this is our life now. Believe it. You're stuck with me forever. I can think of worse fates." They stood there for a while, wrapped up in each other and the peaceful night. Xavier thought about everything that had led to this moment, all the fear and doubt that had nearly kept them apart. He had been so worried about breaking the rules, about losing Marcus's friendship, about risking everything he had built. But Jade had been brave enough to push past his walls, to make him see that love was worth the risk. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, tilting her head back to look at him. "About how you changed everything, how you made me believe in something more than just work and success. You gave me something too, you know. You showed me what it's like to be with someone who sees all of me, not just the parts I show the world. Someone who supports my dreams just as fiercely as I support theirs. We make a pretty good team. The best team." They returned to the reception eventually, dancing and celebrating with their loved ones until the vineyard staff gently suggested that perhaps it was time to wrap up. Xavier and Jade said their goodbyes, hugging everyone and promising to share photos once they returned from their honeymoon in Italy. The honeymoon was 2 weeks of pure bliss. They explored Rome and Florence, ate their weight in pasta and gelato, and spent lazy mornings in bed at their hotel overlooking the Amalfi Coast. Xavier had been on plenty of business trips to Europe, but experiencing it with Jade was entirely different. She found joy in everything, from the street musicians to the tiny family-owned trattorias tucked away in narrow alleys. "We should buy a place here," she said one evening as they watched the sunset from their balcony. Something small, just for us. We could come back every year. Consider it done. I'll have my real estate agent start looking." She laughed and swatted his arm playfully. "I was kidding. You can't just buy property every time I make an offhand comment. Watch me. Besides, it's our property now. What's mine is yours, remember." The reminder of their joined lives made her smile soften. "I'm still getting used to that, being part of a we instead of just me. How's it feel? Like coming home?" They returned to San Francisco tanned and happy, ready to start their life together. Xavier had surprised Jade by buying a house in Oakland, not far from where her parents lived. It was a beautiful craftsman with a huge backyard and plenty of space for the family they both wanted someday. "You bought a house without telling me?" Jade asked when he drove her there from the airport, her voice caught between exasperation and delight. "I wanted it to be a surprise. Do you like it?" She stood in the driveway, taking in the wrap-around porch and the mature trees shading the front yard. "Xavier, it's perfect. But you know you're terrible at keeping secrets from me, right? Good thing I don't plan on keeping any more." They spent the next few months making the house their own. Jade had strong opinions about interior design, and Xavier was happy to let her take the lead. His penthouse downtown became his office for late nights when he couldn't make it home, but the house in Oakland was where they built their real life together. Work continued to be demanding for both of them. Xavier's company was expanding into Oregon and Washington, requiring frequent trips north. Jade's reputation as a physical therapist grew, and she started teaching workshops on rehabilitation techniques at the local university. They were busy, but they always made time for each other. Sunday morning breakfasts in bed, Wednesday date nights no matter what, and phone calls throughout the day just to hear each other's voices. A year after the wedding, Jade came home from work with news that made Xavier's heart stop. She had that look on her face, the one that meant something big was coming. "We need to talk," she said, which never led anywhere good. Xavier set down the contract he had been reviewing, giving her his full attention. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Better than fine, actually." She sat beside him on the couch, taking his hand. "Xavier, I'm pregnant." The world tilted sideways. "Pregnant? Are you sure?" "Very sure. I took 3 tests just to be certain. I have an appointment with my doctor next week to confirm, but all the signs are there." She bit her lip, suddenly uncertain. "I know we talked about waiting another year or two, but..." Xavier cut her off with a kiss that was equal parts joy and relief and overwhelming love. "This is amazing. You're amazing. We're going to have a baby." Her smile was radiant. "We're going to have a baby. Are you ready for this?" "I've been ready since the day I met you. I just didn't know it yet." The pregnancy was smooth despite Jade's concerns about juggling work and preparing for a baby. Xavier did everything he could to make things easier, cutting back on business trips and making sure she never had to stress about anything. Marcus was thrilled at the prospect of becoming an uncle, already planning all the ways he would spoil the kid. Boy or girl? He asked one evening over dinner at Xavier and Jade's house. "We're not finding out," Jade said, one hand resting on her growing belly. "We want it to be a surprise. I'm betting boy. The Montgomery men are strong swimmers." Xavier threw a dinner roll at his best friend. "That's my wife you're talking about. And my sister. I have seniority here." Watching them bicker good-naturedly, Xavier felt overwhelming gratitude for how everything had turned out. 2 years ago, he had been terrified of admitting his feelings for Jade, convinced it would destroy everything. Now she was his wife, carrying his child, and Marcus was still his best friend. Better than that, they were family in every sense of the word. Jade went into labor on a Tuesday morning in early spring, 3 days before her due date. Xavier had been in a meeting with investors when his phone rang, and he had literally run out of the conference room without explanation. He made it to the hospital in record time, finding Jade in a delivery room with his mother and hers flanking her. "About time you showed up," she said through gritted teeth as another contraction hit. "This is all your fault." "I know, I'm sorry, I love you," he babbled, taking her hand and letting her squeeze hard enough to cut off circulation. The labor was long and difficult, but 17 hours later, Xavier held his daughter for the first time. She was tiny and red-faced and absolutely perfect, with a full head of dark hair and her mother's expressive eyes. "She's beautiful," he whispered, unable to look away from the miracle in his arms. "She's perfect." "What should we name her?" Jade asked, exhausted but glowing. They had argued about names for months without agreeing on anything. But looking at his daughter, Xavier knew exactly what felt right. "Julia, after your grandmother." Tears filled Jade's eyes. "Julia Montgomery, I love it." Julia Grace Montgomery became the center of their world. Xavier, who had once lived for business deals and profit margins, found himself leaving work early to make it home for bath time. He learned to function on minimal sleep, to change diapers with one hand while holding a phone conference with the other, and to love someone so fiercely it was almost frightening. When Julia was 6 months old, Jade went back to work part-time, and they hired a nanny to help during the day. It was an adjustment, learning to balance their careers with parenthood, but they figured it out together. Marcus was indeed the world's most devoted uncle, showing up unannounced with toys and books and offering to babysit whenever they needed a date night. 3 years flew by in a blur of first steps and first words and endless joy. Julia was a bright, curious child who loved books and music, and following her father around asking endless questions about everything. Xavier couldn't imagine his life without her, without Jade, without the family they had built. "I want another one," Jade said one night after they had put Julia to bed. They were curled up on the couch, enjoying the rare quiet. "Another what?" Xavier asked, though he knew exactly what she meant. "Another baby. Julia needs a sibling, and I'm not getting any younger." Xavier pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Then let's have another baby, or 2, or however many you want. 2 total sounds perfect. Any more than that and we'll need a bigger house." "I can buy a bigger house." She laughed, the sound as warm and familiar as home. "Of course you can. But let's start with one more baby and see how we feel." Their son, James Alexander Montgomery, arrived 18 months later, and their family felt complete. Xavier cut back even more on work, finally accepting that some things were more important than closing deals or expanding the business. He promoted his right-hand woman to COO, giving her authority to make day-to-day decisions while he focused on strategy and spending time with his family. On James's first birthday, the whole extended family gathered at Xavier and Jade's house for a party. Kids ran through the backyard while adults chatted and laughed. Marcus was manning the grill, arguing with Xavier's father about the proper way to cook burgers. Jade's mother was in the kitchen with Xavier's mother, the 2 women having become close friends over the years. Xavier stood on the back porch, taking it all in. Julia was playing with her cousins, her laughter ringing out clear and bright. Jade was holding James, pointing out something in the trees to their son. She caught Xavier's eye and smiled, that same smile that had captured his heart years ago. Marcus appeared beside him, handing over a beer. "You look contemplative. Everything okay? Everything's perfect." "I was just thinking about how different my life is from what I expected. Better or worse? So much better it's not even comparable. 5 years ago I thought success meant money and power. Now I know it means this." He gestured at the scene before them. "Family, love, people who matter." "You've gone soft," Marcus teased, but his voice was affectionate. Remember when you used to work 80-hour weeks and survive on coffee and pure determination? I remember thinking that was living. Now I know I was just existing. Xavier turned to his best friend, his brother in every way that mattered. Thank you, by the way. For what? For trusting me with your sister. For not punching me when you found out we were together. For being okay with all of this. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. You made her happy. You gave her the life she deserves. That's all I ever wanted for Jade. Besides, you gave me the world's cutest niece and nephew, so I think we're even. They stood there in comfortable silence, watching their families mingle and celebrate. Jade eventually made her way over, settling James into Xavier's arms before leaning against his side. What are my two favorite men talking about? She asked. How lucky I am, Xavier said, kissing her softly. How I almost let fear keep me from the best thing that ever happened to me. Good thing I'm persuasive, Jade said with a grin. Good thing I was smart enough to listen. As the sun set over Oakland, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Xavier looked around at the life he had built. His beautiful wife, his perfect children, his best friend, and the family that had welcomed him with open arms. He had started out as a businessman focused solely on success, never expecting that breaking his own rules would lead him to everything he never knew he needed. Jade squeezed his hand and he squeezed back, a silent conversation that needed no words. They had taken a risk on forbidden love, and it had become there forever. And Xavier Montgomery, who had spent years building an empire, knew that his greatest achievement would always be the family he came home to every night. Julia ran up to them, tugging on Xavier's sleeve. Daddy, come play. Lead the way, sweetheart. He handed James back to Jade, then let his daughter pull him toward whatever adventure she had planned. As he played with Julia in the backyard of the home they had filled with love, Xavier smiled. This was his empire now, built not on properties and deals, but on laughter and love and the messy, beautiful chaos of family. And he wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. The forbidden had indeed become his future, and his future was more wonderful than any dream he could have imagined.